May 1942, north of Norway, HMS Somali cut through Arctic water at 28 knots, her 8 4.7-inch guns trained on the horizon. Most destroyer captains commanded ships with 4 or 5 main guns. Somali carried 8. The Admiralty called it excessive. German naval intelligence called it wasteful. Then the war started, and those 8 guns fought everything from destroyers to cruisers to aircraft. By May 1942, 12 of the 16 Tribal-class destroyers were already gone, sunk in combat across 3 oceans. The class suffered a 75% loss rate. Naval analysts called it catastrophic. Yet the 4 survivors kept fighting, and the Admiralty kept the gun armament in destroyer design. Because those 8 guns achieved what conventional destroyers could not. They fought above their weight. They won engagements against superior forces. And they proved British destroyer doctrine correct even as the casualty list grew longer. The Royal Navy entered 1939 with a destroyer problem. Treaty limitations restricted destroyer displacement to 1,500-ton standard. British destroyers carried 4.7-inch guns, typically 4 or 5 per ship. German destroyers carried 5.9-inch guns, 5 per ship. The Kriegsmarine destroyers outgunned Royal Navy equivalents. In surface engagements, heavier guns won. The mathematics were brutal. A 5.9-inch shell weighed 100 pounds. A 4.7-inch shell weighed 50 pounds. German destroyers threw 500 pounds of metal per salvo. British destroyers threw 200 pounds. In destroyer versus destroyer combat, the Germans had firepower superiority. The Admiralty needed to close that gap without violating treaty tonnage limits. Previous British destroyer classes prioritized torpedo armament. The J-class, K-class, and N-class destroyers carried 8 or 10 torpedo tubes and only 6 4.7-inch guns. This reflected interwar doctrine. Torpedoes decided destroyer actions. Guns were defensive weapons against aircraft and enemy destroyers at range. Combat in the North Sea and Mediterranean proved this doctrine flawed. Destroyer actions happened at gun range, not torpedo range. Engagements opened at 12,000 yards. Torpedoes were effective at 3,000 yards. Destroyers fought with guns for 9,000 yards before torpedoes became relevant. British destroyers were outgunned for most of every engagement. The Admiralty responded with the Tribal class. 16 ships ordered between 1935 and 1938. Displacement jumped to 1,900 tons standard, 2,500 tons full load. This violated no treaties. Destroyer limits had increased. The extra tonnage went into guns. 8 4.7-inch guns in 4 twin mountings, 2 forward, 2 aft. Broadside throw weight, 400 pounds. This matched German destroyer firepower. Fire control directors gave accurate gunnery at maximum range. The Tribals could engage enemy destroyers at 12,000 yards with full 8-gun salvos. The design sacrificed torpedo armament. Where J-class destroyers carried 10 torpedo tubes, Tribals carried 4, 1 quadruple mounting amidships. Doctrine changed. Tribals would fight primarily with guns. Torpedoes became secondary weapons for finishing damaged enemies or attacking larger warships. The gun armament made Tribals mini-cruisers. They could support fleet actions, provide anti-aircraft fire, bombard shore positions, and win surface engagements against anything smaller than a light cruiser. 16 ships entered service between 1938 and 1939. Afridi, Ashanti, Bedouin, Cossack, Eskimo, Gurkha, Maori, Mashona, Matabele, Mohawk, Nubian, Punjabi, Sikh, Somali, Tartar, and Zulu. Each displaced 1,900 tons standard. Each carried 8 4.7-inch guns. Each mounted 4.5-inch anti-aircraft guns and multiple smaller caliber weapons. Speed ranged from 31 to 36 knots, depending on individual ship trials. Range was 5,700 nautical miles at 15 knots. Complement numbered 190 officers and crew. If you are enjoying this technical analysis of Royal Navy destroyer design, subscribing helps the channel and ensures you get the next deep dive into British naval excellence. Combat proved the gun armament decision correct immediately. February 1940, Cossack intercepted the German supply ship Altmark in Norwegian waters. The Altmark carried 300 British prisoners from ships sunk by the Graf Spee. Cossack closed to point-blank range. Her guns dominated the engagement. The Germans surrendered, All 300 prisoners were freed. The action demonstrated what heavy gun armament enabled: aggressive close-range operations against armed merchant vessels. May 1940, the tribals fought in Norwegian waters during the campaign. Afridi provided gunfire support for British troops evacuating Namsos. German bombers found her. 8 4.7-inch guns engaged low. The anti-aircraft battery fired continuously. Afridi shot down 3 confirmed aircraft. The bombers kept coming. A stick of bombs hit amidships. Afridi sank in 10 minutes. First tribal lost. The heavy gun armament had proven effective even in the role it was not designed for: anti-aircraft defense. June 1940, Mediterranean. Bedouin, Punjabi, and Sikhs screened the fleet during operations against the Italian Navy. Italian destroyers approached. The tribals engaged at 11,000 yards. 8 4.7-inch guns per ship. 24 guns total. The Italians turned away under the weight of fire. No British destroyer damage. The gun armament provided decisive firepower advantage at the ranges where destroyer actions were fought. December 1940, North Atlantic. Somali and Mashona hunted German raiders. They found nothing. A U-boat found them. Torpedoes hit Mashona. She sank. Second tribal lost. The heavy gun armament was irrelevant against submarine attack. The losses mounted steadily. May 1941, Cossack Depth charged U-556. The U-boat torpedoed Cossack in return. She sank under tow. Third tribal lost. October 1941, Cossack torpedoed again while escorting convoy, sank. That is a different Cossack. Correction. It was still the same Cossack from the Altmark action, torpedoed in October 1941 and sank under tow. The Mediterranean became the tribal graveyard. May 1941, Crete evacuation. Gurkha, Greyhound, Kelly, Kashmir, all sunk by German dive bombers. Gurkha was a tribal, fourth lost. The 8 4.7-inch guns could not stop massed air attack. June 1941, Mohawk engaged Italian destroyers at night. Gun action at close range. Mohawk damaged 2 Italian destroyers. An Italian torpedo hit Mohawk. She sank. Fifth tribal lost. The gun armament proved effective in the surface action. The torpedo attack was simply bad luck in night combat. September 1941, Malta convoy operation. Sikh screened merchantmen. German bombers attacked. Sikh shot down 2 confirmed. Bombs hit her anyway. She sank. Sixth tribal lost. November 1941, Bardia raid on Libyan coast. Sikh and Zulu provided gunfire support. Sikh ran aground under fire. Was scuttled. That is incorrect. It was a different operation. Let me correct the record. September 1942, Tobruk raid. Sikh and Zulu bombarded shore installations with their 8 4.7-inch guns. The bombardment was effective. Both ships were damaged by return fire. Sikh could not withdraw. She was scuttled. Zulu escaped damage. Sikh was the 7th tribal lost. This was in September 1942, not 41. January 1942, Matabele escorted convoy near Murmansk. U-454 torpedoed her. Matabele sank in Arctic water. 2 survivors from 190 crew. 8th tribal lost. May 1942, Second Battle of Sirte. 3 tribals present. All survived this time. The gun armament proved critical. Italian cruisers engaged. The tribals fought back with 8 4.7-inch guns each, supporting the cruiser screen. The Italians withdrew. August 1942, pedestal convoy to Malta. 12 merchantmen, 57 warships escorting. Tribals present. German and Italian air attack for 3 days. 1 tribal lost. Correction, none lost in this operation. The tribals survived pedestal. September 1942, Somali torpedoed returning from convoy. Sank under tow. 9th tribal lost. November 1942, North Africa landings. Tribals provided gunfire support. 8 4.7-inch guns per ship bombarded shore positions. Highly effective for suppressing coastal batteries. No tribals lost in this operation. The gun armament justified itself again in the fire support role. December 1942, Barents Sea, battle against German destroyers. Tribals not present for this action. Convoy JW-51B. British destroyers fought German destroyers to stand still. The German destroyers carried 5.9-inch guns, but were driven off by British destroyer and cruiser gunfire. By end of 1942, 9 of 16 tribals were gone. The losses continued. February 1943, Gurkha already sunk, a second Gurkha of different class was lost, not relevant here. May 1943, Eskimo damaged by mine, survived. The survivors fought on. Compare tribal specifications to German Type 1936 destroyers. German displacement, 2,400 tons. British tribal displacement, 2,500 tons full load. Nearly identical. German armament, 5.9-inch guns. British tribal armament, 8 4.7-inch guns. German broadside, 500 pounds. British broadside, 400 pounds. The Germans had slight weight advantage, but British rate of fire was higher. British fire control was superior. In actual combat, tribals consistently outshot German destroyers when they met. The British design accepted torpedo armament reduction for gun superiority. German destroyers kept torpedoes but had fewer guns. Different doctrines. Combat proved the British approach effective. Tribal-class destroyers sank or damaged more enemy vessels per ship than any other British destroyer class of the war. Despite the horrific loss rate, their combat effectiveness was exceptional. Compared to U.S. Navy Fletcher-class destroyers, American displacement, 2,700 tons. American armament, 5.5-inch 38 caliber guns. Different design philosophy entirely. Americans prioritized anti-aircraft capability and torpedo armament. 10 torpedo tubes on Fletchers. The tribals were designed for surface combat in European waters. The Fletchers were designed for Pacific operations. Both succeeded in their intended roles. Neither design was superior in absolute terms. Context determined effectiveness. The verdict on tribal-class destroyers is clear in the numbers. 12 of 16 lost in combat, 75% loss rate. This sounds catastrophic. But examine what those 12 achieved before sinking. The tribals fought in every major naval theater. They sank enemy destroyers. They drove off Italian cruisers. They supported amphibious operations. They escorted convoys. They conducted raids. Their 8 4.7-inch guns gave them firepower to fight above their displacement class. The 4 survivors, Ashanti, Eskimo, Nubian, and Tartar, all served until 1949 or later. They survived because they were effective. Ships that work get used constantly. Ships that work get sent into danger. The tribal losses reflect how valuable they were. The Admiralty sent them where the fighting was heaviest because their gun armament made them capable of winning. Post-war destroyer design retained the lesson. Heavy gun armament for destroyers became standard. The battle-class destroyers carried 4 4.5-inch guns in twin mountings. Later, daring-class destroyers carried 6 4.5-inch guns. The tribal doctrine, destroyers fight primarily with guns, became British destroyer doctrine permanently. May 1942, north of Norway, Somali patrolled in Arctic water with 8 4.7-inch guns ready. She would be torpedoed 4 months later. But on this patrol, those guns represented British naval thinking at its best. Accept losses. Build ships that fight. Send them where the fighting matters. The 12 tribals lost died doing exactly what they were designed to do, fighting above their weight and winning more often than they lost. The 4.7-inch guns proved their worth in combat. The casualty rate proved the Admiralty sent them to every critical operation. Both facts validate the design. British destroyers ruled close waters through firepower, doctrine, and crew quality. The tribals embodied all three. The war proved it with 12 wrecks and 4 survivors that kept fighting until there were no enemies left to fight.